Early pregnancy, physical harm, behavioral symptoms such as terror and anxiety, shame, guilt, self-hatred, depression, anger, drug abuse, mental illness, and suicide. Those are all side effects, symptoms, what have you, of being a sexual abuse victim. Welcome back to Bible Bears, guys. I'm Ryder Cullison. Now, why am I talking about this today? Because there seems to be some sort of subtle cultural shift towards pedophilia in our society. One obvious offender is Cuties. Now, if you haven't watched my previous video on Netflix's special Cuties, go check that out. It gives you a little bit more background on it, but it's basically about a troupe of girls, 4 girls, prepubescent, they're like 11 years old. It's a twerking dance crew. So, well, here's a clip right here. And I think that's all we really need to see from that. So we've got Cuties. We've got Planned Parenthood's sex education manual aimed at students 4th grade and up, where they actually have pornographic pictures in it. So it's really, like some experts have said, people who are law enforcement officials who work in the sex trafficking industry see it as a manual that's grooming children. It's making sex seem more acceptable to them. We saw recently, in the past 2 months, law enforcement in states such as Michigan, Ohio, and Georgia rescued 58 children between the ages of 3 and 17, many of whom were being sex trafficked. In fact, research suggests that in the last year, of the 24,000 endangered runaways, 1 in 6 were victims of sex trafficking. So we see this kind of being on the rise, not only from a criminal aspect, are children being forced into sex trafficking, not just adult women, but children now. We see almost that it's children, the over-sexualization of children is being normalized in the media. Here's one example. This took place a few years ago. This is actress Millie Bobby Brown. You may know her as Eleven from the very popular Netflix show Stranger Things. I watch Stranger Things. It's a good show. She's not over-sexualized in the show. However, a few years ago, W Magazine named her as one of the sexiest people on TV. That's when she was only 13 years old. So there was a big outcry on that because they're basically saying she's hot, she's sexy as a 13-year-old. And we see a lot of inconsistency in society right now. On the one hand, we have the whole Me Too movement, especially with Harvey Weinstein and then the Jeffrey Epstein arrests. We know what's going on. We've seen it in the media. But with Cuties, with Millie Bobby Brown, with Planned Parenthood sex education manual, now we've got this QAnon conspiracy going on, which is basically saying that there's an underground cult of Satan worshipers who are pedophiles, and they're made up of Hollywood elites and Democratic lawmakers. I don't believe in a conspiracy, but I do obviously believe that there are underground rings of organizations managing sex trafficking, basically feeding the appetites of these pedophiles. Now, for those of you who don't know what pedophilia is, it's a sexual orientation where one individual is interested in prepubescent girls or boys, or girls and boys. These are girls and boys who have yet to reach puberty. Okay, the majority of pedophiles are men. However, women can be pedophiles as well. Now, as it is a sexual orientation, that craving, that appetite for young individuals who have yet to reach puberty does not change. Okay, there's really no effective treatment for it except removing stimulants and exposure to people of that age. So, someone who's a pedophile shouldn't be working in organizations where there are children, and obviously we see a number of these people inserting themselves into these types of organizations. For example, someone who's a pedophile may get a job at Chuck E. Cheese. Sadly, we see pedophiles getting jobs in churches where they're disguising themselves as Christians only to have access to children. Now, here's something else that's troubling to consider with this kind of rise. We see this movement towards giving people individual empowerment, such as allowing girls, young girls below the age of 18, sometimes as young as 16, maybe even younger, to get abortions without their parents' consent. We see children being allowed to decide their own gender before they've even hit puberty. Now, if you're going to allow children to get abortions, if you're going to allow children to decide their gender, how much longer will it be until we let children to decide when they are or are not able to consent to a sexual relationship? This is what I want you to consider. And I'm not picking on homosexuals here. But years ago, homosexuality was considered very taboo. If you came out as homosexual, you could be mocked, scorned, ostracized, you could lose your job, you could be physically assaulted, you could even be murdered. That's how much there was a stigma on homosexuality. Now it's much more acceptable, right? We have homosexuals coming out everywhere. There's shows dedicated to be homosexual. Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. There's a number of shows on Showtime or HBO. Where were all these homosexuals before? They were there. They've always been there. Now, what might be worrisome, which you haven't considered, is there could be an equal number or greater of individuals that have an orientation towards children. And now we are feeding their appetites with shows like Cuties, with publicizing 13-year-olds as sexy, as grooming children through nefarious, subtle means such as Planned Parenthood sex education curriculum by providing them pornography. Listen, Christians, non-Christians, Jews, Muslims, whoever, the line in the sand must be drawn, and we must stop this. You can't keep backing up, allowing this to cross the line. Matthew, Mark, and Luke all say, if anyone causes one of these little ones to stumble, it will be better to have a millstone tied around their neck and them thrown in the sea and drowned. God has a design for intimacy. It's within marriage. So anyone looking for verses in the Bible that somehow supports pedophilia, you're wrong. Intimacy is designed to be within marriage, between a man and a woman, not between a man and a child. Listen, put your comments below. Is there really a rise in pedophilia? Or have we blown cuties and all this normalization of sexualization of children out of proportion? Will this just blow over and go away? And then maybe it'll rear its ugly head in another 5-10 years. We'll deal with it and then it'll go away. Or is there an underground, a current going underground, unseen, of pockets of pedophiles around the country, and if we only make it more acceptable, then they'll rise up and then they'll come out? What can the Christian church do? What can any churches, any denomination, any religion, any non-believer do to protect the children in our society? Please put that in your comments below. Guys, as always, like, subscribe, and share. We got to get the word out here, so share it with as many people as possible. Share these statistics. We need to look after the next generation, and we need to raise them up right, because if we don't raise them up right, then the generation that comes after them will be an even grainier copy, and the generation after them will be even more deplorable. We have to make a stand here. Thank you guys. I love ya. As always, have a blessed day.